Dr. Kova-Chen hated galactic broadcasts. 2 hours of bureaucratic droning translated through compression algorithms that stripped every sentence of meaning. She sat wedged between a Coral Trade representative and an empty seat, her gray thermal jacket smelling faintly of recycled station air and the protein bars she'd been living on for 3 weeks. The amphitheater buzzed with ambient noise, delegates shuffling, translators humming, someone's respiration apparatus wheezing 2 rows back. Emperor Vector stood center stage, his chitinous forearms spread wide in what his species considered magnanimous authority. To Kova, it looked like he was hugging an invisible beach ball. She checked her datapad. Soil analysis reports from Kepler 442b waited in her queue, nitrogen cycles, bacterial colonization rates, real work, important work, not this pageantry. Quarantine of Sol-3 has been elevated to full sterilization status, the translation matrix announced. Kova's head snapped up. The species known as humanity posed an escalating threat to regional stability, Emperor Vector continued, his voice carrying that practiced indifference of someone discussing canceled lunch reservations. Their experimentation with proscribed dimensional technologies left us no alternative. As of Galactic Standard Time 6847.3, Earth no longer supports complex biological life. A holographic display materialized, blue-green marble, rotating serenely, flash of white light. When it faded, the planet looked like charcoal. The operation was clean, the Emperor said. Surgical. We owe thanks to the Vector Purification Fleet for their efficiency. Polite clicking rippled through the amphitheater. Golf claps in Alien. Kova's hand went up. Not tentacle, not pseudopod, not grasp or limb. A 5-fingered, opposable thumb-having, distinctly mammalian hand. The Emperor's eye stalks swiveled. His mandibles stopped mid-click. His lead advisor, a beetle-like creature named Zurich, noticed next, all 6 limbs going rigid. Silence spread outward like blood in water. Kova kept her hand raised, patient, exhausted, annoyed. Yes, the Emperor managed. His voice came out strangled. Quick question, Kova said, standing and brushing protein bar crumbs off her pants. When you say Earth, you're talking about the 3rd planet in the Sol system, the one with the moon that's slightly too large for its mass, oceans covering about 70% of the surface, had around 8 billion of us last time anyone checked. The Emperor's primary arms lowered slowly. That is correct. Right, okay, Kova smiled. It wasn't friendly. Just wanted to make sure we were discussing the same planet. She paused, letting the moment breathe. Follow-up question. If Earth is gone and everyone on it is dead, then who exactly am I? Zurich made a sound like a garbage disposal choking on silverware. This is not, the Emperor's translation matrix seemed to struggle. There were no survivors. This is confirmed. I have the reports. I'm sure you do, Kova said, tilting her head. Let me guess. Sensor sweeps, satellite confirmation, maybe some drone footage of the smoldering ruins. Comprehensive verification, Zurich interjected, his voice too high. 7 independent sources, full spectrum analysis, biological signatures eliminated across the entire planetary surface. Surface, Kova repeated slowly. That's interesting, because about 40% of humanity doesn't actually live on the surface. Subway systems, underground bunkers, cave networks, basement apartments in New York that legally shouldn't exist but definitely do. We're burrowers, we dig. It's kind of our thing. A Mithurian delegate leaned forward, suddenly interested. But more importantly, Kova continued, I wasn't on Earth during your surgical operation. I was on Kepler 442b doing soil analysis for a terraforming project. Very boring work, actually. Lots of pH testing. She crossed her arms. I got the notification about Earth approximately 4 hours ago, which is when I decided to attend today's meeting, to hear the official version. The Emperor's mandibles clicked frantically. Zurich was scrolling through something on a datapad, all 6 limbs moving at once. The Council of Regional Oversight provided clearance, Zurich said. Did they? Kova's voice went flat. And which species sit on that council again? Silence. Let me save everyone some time. The Vector Dominion controls 4 of the 7 seats. The other 3 species owe you trade concessions. So really, what you're telling me is that you gave yourself permission to commit genocide, rubber-stamped it with your own bureaucracy, and announced it during a mandatory broadcast because you thought nobody would complain. She looked around the amphitheater. Anyone else think that's weird? The Mathurian delegate raised one appendage, then quickly lowered it when the Emperor's eye stalks swiveled toward him. Kova's smile returned, same cold expression, same predatory patience. I have one more question. The Emperor said nothing. Zurich had stopped moving entirely. Who, Kova said very carefully, do I speak to about filing a formal complaint regarding crimes against sapient species? Because I'm going to need some forms, probably a lot of forms, and I've got nothing but time. The amphitheater remained silent. Somewhere in the back, a delegate's translator hiccuped out a single word in perfect, unaccented English. Damn, the conference room smelled like recycled air and desperation. 3 walls were transparent aluminum, offering a view of the station's docking ring. The 4th displayed a rotating vector imperial seal, which struck Kova as aggressively optimistic given current circumstances. She'd been escorted here by guards who hadn't quite known whether to aim weapons at her or apologize. They'd settled on nervous hovering. Now she sat alone, drinking something that approximated coffee if coffee had given up on itself halfway through. The door dilated. Zurich entered first, followed by 2 advisors, a crystalline entity named Velkarin whose body chimed softly with each movement, and a Marcotti whose name translated to something like Negotiator of 17 Crises. We appreciate your patience, Zurich began. I wasn't being patient, Kova said. I was reading your station's safety protocols. Did you know your fire suppression system hasn't been inspected in 3 cycles? That's a violation of your own civil code. Velkarin's crystalline structure flickered. Perhaps we could focus on more pressing matters. Sure, Kova set down her terrible coffee. You murdered my planet, press away. Murdered is inflammatory, the negotiator said smoothly. Earth was already in decline. Your species had exhausted 17% of available resources. Climate instability was accelerating. We simply expedited an inevitable conclusion. Mercy killing, Zurich added, mandibles clicking in what might have been sympathy or gas. Really? Kova stared at him. We invented agriculture 12,000 years ago. We've had at least 6 separate apocalyptic close calls in the last century alone. We flooded our own cities, melted our own ice caps, and nearly nuked ourselves into oblivion 3 times on a Tuesday. If we wanted to destroy Earth, we'd have done it ourselves and enjoyed the process. Your species' self-destructive tendencies support our assessment, Velkarin chimed. No, see, you're missing the point, Kova leaned forward. We almost destroyed ourselves, almost, past tense. We course-corrected. We're annoyingly good at that. Cockroaches wish they had our survival instincts. The negotiator's tendrils rippled. Your metaphor is noted. It's not a metaphor. We cataloged cockroaches. We studied them. We named subspecies after politicians we didn't like. Then we developed 14 different ways to kill them, realized they were vital to certain ecosystems, and drafted protection legislation. That's not self-destruction. That's spite-fueled problem-solving. Zurich's datapad chirped. He glanced at it, and something in his posture shifted. Let's discuss your research, he said too casually. You mentioned terraforming work on Kepler 442b. What exactly were you analyzing? Soil composition, nitrogen cycles, bacterial colonization rates, she shrugged. Standard xenobotany prep work. And your propulsion technology. How did you reach Kepler 442b? There it was. Kova watched all three advisors lean in microscopically. We bought transport from a Quarrel merchant vessel, standard commercial arrangement. Why? Because, Velkarin said, her chimes suddenly sharp. Kepler 442b is 67 light-years from Sol. Commercial transport on Quarrel vessels averages .4 light speed with layover delays. Your journey should have taken 170 years subjective time. Math checks out, Kova agreed. You're clearly not 170 years old. Cryostasis, she said immediately. We've had that technology for decades. The negotiator's tendrils went completely still. Humanity was flagged as pre-FTL. You shouldn't possess independent faster-than-light capability. We don't, that's why I hitched a ride. The Quarrel vessel's logs, Zurich said, reading from his datapad, show you boarded at Kepler 442b 16 months ago. But the last approved Quarrel transport to that system departed Sol 3 years ago. Kova smiled. So either I've mastered time travel or humanity built their own ships, the negotiator finished quietly, and didn't file the paperwork. The temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees. That's a Regulation 7 violation, Velkarin said. Exterminating an entire species is also a violation, Kova replied. Bigger number too, I checked. Kova stood, walking to the transparent wall. Ships drifted past outside, oblivious. You want to know why you really sterilized Earth? It wasn't because we were dangerous. It was because we figured out your FTL monopoly is artificial. Zurich's mandibles locked. The Vector Dominion controls faster-than-light travel licensing across 47 sectors, Kova continued. Every species pays you transit fees. Every government signs exclusivity contracts. You've built an empire on keeping everyone else slow. She turned back to face them. Except we weren't slow anymore. We'd reverse-engineered the principle from observing your ships. We hadn't announced it yet because we were still testing, still building, but you knew. Somehow you knew. This is speculation, the negotiator said, but his voice had lost its smoothness. Then charge me with Regulation 7 violations. Call me before a tribunal. Let's get all the evidence on record. Kova's smile was razor-thin. Or we could skip the theatrics, because here's what happens next. She walked back to the table, placed both palms flat on its surface. I'm the last confirmed human with legal standing. Under galactic preservation law, I can file a genocide complaint. The investigation takes a minimum of 2 years. During that time, all Vector commercial activity in contested sectors gets frozen pending review. The advisors exchanged glances. 47 sectors, Kova said softly. 2 years. How's your economy looking these days? Zurich's limbs trembled. Velkarin's chimes had gone discordant. The negotiator's tendrils coiled tightly against his body. What do you want? Zurich finally asked. Wrong question, Kova straightened. You should be asking what I'm going to do. She picked up her terrible coffee, drained it, and set the cup down with a hollow thunk. I'm going to find out how many of us are left. The message boards lit up first. Not the official channels. Those were still looping the Emperor's original announcement with increasingly frantic disclaimers. No, the real information flowed through gray markets, smuggler networks, the places where data went when it didn't want to be taxed. A Fenrich information broker named Teska posted the initial thread on an encrypted forum. Survivor confirmed at Imperial Station. Human female, alive, talking. Within an hour, the thread had 6,000 replies. Within 3 hours, it crashed the server. By the 6th hour, 17 different species had come forward with their own human sightings. Absolutely saw one at the refueling depot on Threshold 9, a Quarrel cargo pilot typed. Thought I was hallucinating from bad filters, but no. Human male, buying ration packs and complaining about the exchange rate. This was 2 days after the supposed sterilization. An Ickle mining supervisor posted coordinates to an asteroid belt in the Talos cluster. We've got a whole crew of them. 6 humans showed up 8 months ago with their own drilling equipment. Didn't ask permission, just started working. When I confronted them, they offered to split profits 60-40. I took the deal. They work non-stop and tell the most disturbing jokes I've ever translated. A medical officer on a deep space research station submitted logs. Patient 774H human male arrived in stasis pod 3 years ago with a note that said, "Wake me when Earth gets interesting." We've been keeping him frozen because nobody knew what to do with him. Should we wake him up now? The Imperial Press Office tried to control the narrative. They issued statements. They held briefings. They explained very patiently that these were isolated incidents, anomalies, clerical errors in the census data. Nobody believed them. A Shard journalist named Crystalline Truth, probably not her real name, but names were flexible in the outer sectors, began compiling testimonies. Her broadcast went live on 40 independent networks simultaneously. "Let's discuss scale," she said, her body refracting light into rainbow patterns across the studio. "The Vector Dominion claims Earth's population was eliminated. 8 billion individuals. That's the official number." She pulled up a chart, numbers scrolled past. But how many humans were off-world at the time of the attack? Colony ship Perseverance launched toward Proxima Centauri in 2119. Crew complement, 12,000 plus genetic samples for another 50,000. Status, active. Last check-in, 7 months ago. Research expedition to Europa Station. 400 personnel rotating shifts. They weren't on Earth. They were on Jupiter's moon. The Mars settlements. Population estimated at 22,000. Technically independent from Earth's governance for the last 15 years, but still genetically human. Deep space commercial contracts. At least 3,000 humans working on non-Terran vessels, conducting surveys, running courier services, doing the jobs nobody else wanted because the pay was terrible and the life expectancy worse. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. "So here's my question for the Emperor. When you sterilized Earth, did you actually exterminate humanity? Or did you just make them homeless?" Kova's broadcast came 3 weeks after her confrontation at Imperial Station. She didn't ask permission. She simply hacked the protocols and appeared on every major network simultaneously. Nobody cut her feed, partly because they were curious, mostly because they were terrified of what she'd do if they tried. She stood in what looked like a cargo bay, surrounded by equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. Behind her, a star map flickered into existence. 17 points lit up in red. "Good evening, Galactic community. Since everyone's been asking, yes, humanity survived. Here's where." The map expanded. Each red point blossomed into data. Colony Alpha 7, population 4,000, established 6 years ago, completely independent from Earth governance. They didn't even know Earth was attacked until yesterday. She paused. They're very upset about it. Way Station Kepler 438, population 900, mixed research facility about 40% human. They've asked me to convey that they're also upset. The Drift Collective, population unknown but estimated between 2 and 5,000. They're nomadic, they live on ships, they move constantly. Another pause, good luck finding them. Her smile was the expression of someone who'd stopped pretending to be reasonable. "I could keep going, but here's the thesis. You can't exterminate humans by destroying our homeworld. We left home. That's what we do. We're a diaspora species now. We didn't even mean to be." The map zoomed out, showing the 17 colonies in relation to vector territory. "Now, Emperor, here's your choice. You can acknowledge that your sterilization failed, Admit to attempted genocide, and we'll discuss reparations. She let the pause stretch. Or we discuss what happens when 17 angry human settlements, each with independent FTL capability you didn't know we had, decide they'd like a word with you about property damage. The transmission cut. 5 minutes later, vector trade routes began reporting system failures, cargo ships stranded, navigation beacons offline, communication relays broadcasting nothing but static and, inexplicably, a very old human song about never giving someone up or letting them down. In the imperial palace, Zurich turned to the emperor. "She's not bluffing," he said. The emperor's mandibles clicked once, twice. "I know." Galactic Council chamber had been redesigned since the last meeting. Someone had added chairs that actually fit human proportions. Kova found it either thoughtful or insulting, depending on her mood. Today she couldn't decide, so she stood at the back instead. 6 months. That's how long it took for the Vector Dominion to implode. Not militarily, nobody had fired a shot. Economically, socially, bureaucratically, the empire had drowned in its own paperwork while 43 trade partners simultaneously discovered they had scheduling conflicts and couldn't possibly honor their contracts until certain legal complications regarding genocide were resolved. Turned out most species didn't enjoy doing business with governments that casually exterminated planets before breakfast. The former emperor wasn't present. He'd abdicated 4 months ago, citing health concerns everyone understood meant crippling political collapse. Zurich had vanished entirely. Rumor placed him on a meditation retreat somewhere in the outer darkness. The Vector delegation now consisted of 3 junior administrators who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Pending resolution of restitution frameworks, a Shard diplomat was saying. The proposed settlement includes technology transfers, territorial concessions, and a formal apology to be broadcast across all imperial channels. "We're not interested in the apology," Kova interrupted. Every head appendage and sensory organ swiveled toward her. "Dr. Chen," the Shard diplomat said carefully, "the apology is a standard component of reconciliation protocols. It's theater. They'll say whatever words make this go away. In 20 years, some historian will call it a regrettable misunderstanding." Kova pocketed her datapad. "Keep the technology transfers. We already figured out your FTL drives anyway. The territorial concessions are useful. We'll take those, but lose the apology." The junior Vector administrator in the center seat leaned forward. "Then, what do you want?" "A monument." Silence. "Constructed in orbit around what's left of Earth. Something big, something permanent. Make it visible from the surface for anyone who eventually goes back down there." She crossed her arms. "Engrave the names of every human who died when you sterilized the planet. All 8 billion. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how expensive it is. You're going to write their names in metal and stone and leave it floating in space where everyone can see what you did." The administrator's mandibles quivered. "That would take decades. The resources alone." "You had resources enough to build the weapons. Find resources for the memorial." Kova's voice was flat, final. "Because here's the thing about humans, we don't forget. We write everything down, we archive, we document, we remember. You tried to erase us. So now you're going to help us remember forever." The Shard diplomat's light flickered with what might have been approval. "The council finds these terms acceptable." 3 weeks later, Kova found herself in a lecture hall on Station Peripheral, facing 24 young diplomats from a dozen different species. This was part of the reparations package, human perspectives integrated into galactic education. She'd agreed to give 1 lecture. 1. The attendees looked terrified. "Relax," Kova said, pulling up a holographic display. "I'm not here to yell at you. I'm here to tell you a story about extinction events and why you should never assume they worked." An image of old Earth appeared. Blue, green, swirling white clouds. Here's the thing nobody tells you about my species. We're invasive. Not intentionally. We just spread. We adapt. We survive things that should absolutely kill us, and then we write folk songs about it. She clicked through images. Cave paintings, sailing ships, space stations, colony worlds. We nearly went extinct at least 6 times before we invented writing. Supervolcanoes, ice ages, plagues that killed 90% of regional populations. We bounced back every time. You know why? A crystalline shard in the back chimed softly. Resilience. Spite, Kova corrected. We're a species that looks at extinction and takes it personally. The universe says you can't survive this. And we respond, watch me. She pulled up the star map from her broadcast. 17 colonies glowing in the darkness. The Emperor thought destroying Earth would eliminate the problem. He eliminated the homeworld and accidentally created something worse. Humans with a grudge and nowhere to return to. We were always going to spread across the galaxy eventually. He just gave us motivation to do it faster. A Mithurian student raised an appendage, so the sterilization backfired. Spectacularly, Kova closed the display. Here's your takeaway for diplomatic careers. Never assume extinction. Verify, triple check. Because if you're wrong, if even one survivor crawls out of the rubble, you've just made an enemy who's got nothing left to lose and infinite patience for revenge. A Karathi student in the corner raised a rocky appendage. Is that a threat? Kova smiled. The same expression she'd worn in the amphitheater 6 months ago, the one that had stopped an emperor mid-speech. No, it's a warning. There's a difference. She glanced at the chronometer. We've got 20 minutes left. Questions? Every appendage in the room shot up simultaneously. Kova laughed, actually laughed, the first genuine sound of amusement she'd made in months, and pointed to the Mithurian. You first, make it interesting. Outside the station, ships moved through the darkness. Human ships now mixed among all the others, no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be something they weren't. The galaxy hadn't killed humanity. It had just forced them to pay attention. And now, as Kova fielded questions from students who'd never met a human before last month, as colonies expanded and monuments were drafted, and the Perseverance closed in on its distant destination, one thing became abundantly clear. The Emperor had declared Earth gone. He'd been right about the planet. He'd been catastrophically wrong about everything else.